The desert wind carried the smell of blood and cedar, and Nebuchadnezzar stood at the edge of the world he had conquered. He was the most powerful man alive. Kings knelt when he passed. Nations emptied their treasuries at the sound of his name. And yet, one night, he woke screaming in a palace of gold, trembling like a child, haunted by a dream he could not even remember. Picture him at the height of his glory. A king who had crushed empires, a builder who raised gardens into the sky until they seemed to hang from the clouds themselves. A conqueror whose armies swallowed Jerusalem whole and carried its treasures home in chains. He had everything a human heart could crave: power, riches, wisdom, worship. He believed he was a god. And that was exactly the problem. Because this is the story of how the greatest king on earth was brought so low that he ate grass like an animal in the wild. It is the story of a man who had to lose his mind to find his soul. Stay with me, because what happens to Nebuchadnezzar is one of the most terrifying and most beautiful reversals in all of Scripture. And by the end, you will understand why his fall might be the most merciful thing that ever happened to him. To understand this king, you have to understand his city, Babylon. Say the name and something ancient stirs. It was the jewel of the ancient world, a city so magnificent that travelers wept when they first saw its walls. Those walls rose so high and so wide that chariots could race along the top of them, 4 abreast. The river Euphrates ran straight through the heart of the city, and along its banks rose temples plated in gold, streets paved in stone, and a great tower that clawed toward heaven. And above it all, the hanging gardens. Terraces of green cascading down like a waterfall of leaves and flowers, blooming in the middle of a desert, watered by machines no one else in the world knew how to build. Nebuchadnezzar had built them, they say, for his wife, who missed the green hills of her homeland. Even in his pride, there was tenderness. Remember that. It matters. This was a man who took a pile of mud brick and turned it into a wonder of the world. Can you blame him for feeling like a god? The heat pressed down like a hand. Incense curled from 1,000 altars. Priests in linen chanted to gods of stone. And through it all walked Nebuchadnezzar, king of kings, master of the earth, a man who had never once been told the word no. But something was about to speak to him that no army could silence. It began with a dream. He woke in the dark, his heart pounding, drenched in sweat, gripped by a terror he could not name. He had seen something in his sleep, something vast and terrible, and the moment his eyes opened, it slipped away from him like water through his fingers. He knew only that it had shaken him to the core. And a king who cannot control his own mind is a king who cannot sleep. So he summoned his wise men, his magicians, his astrologers, the men who read the stars and whispered secrets. And he gave them a command so impossible that they must have felt the floor drop out from under them. Tell me my dream, and then tell me what it means. They stared at him. Surely he had misspoken. Tell us the dream, O king, they said, and we will interpret it. That is how it works. You describe it, and we explain it. But Nebuchadnezzar had grown suspicious of these men. He wanted to know if their power was real, and so he refused. No, he said. You will tell me the dream itself. If you cannot, I will know you are frauds who invent lies to flatter me, and you will die. All of you, every wise man in Babylon." The room went cold, because no human being can reach into another man's sleeping mind and pull out a forgotten dream. They knew it. They said it plainly. There is not a man on earth who can do what the king asks. Only the gods could do such a thing, and the gods do not walk among men. They had spoken truer than they knew. The king's fury exploded. He signed the death warrant. Every wise man in Babylon was to be executed, and among them, a young man from Jerusalem, a captive, a foreigner, a Hebrew with a Babylonian name, Daniel. You have to understand who this young man was. He had been torn from his homeland as a boy when Nebuchadnezzar's armies sacked Jerusalem. Everything he loved had been taken from him: his temple, his freedom, his future. He had been dragged in chains to serve in the court of the very king who destroyed his world. And yet Daniel had not grown bitter. He had grown deep. When the soldiers came for him, Daniel did not panic. He did not beg. He asked one quiet question: why is the decree so urgent? And when he learned the reason, he did something that would define his entire life. He asked the king for time, and then he went home and prayed. He gathered his 3 friends, 3 young men who had also been carried far from home, and together they cried out to the God of heaven in the dark. Not to the gods of Babylon, not to the stars, to the living God, the one who sees what is hidden, the one who reveals deep and secret things. And that night, the mystery was unveiled to Daniel in a vision. Imagine his heart when he woke. The impossible had been given to him. He did not rush to the king to save his own skin. First, he fell down and blessed God. Wisdom and power belong to him, Daniel prayed. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who understand. Every word of that prayer was about to come true in ways Daniel could not yet imagine. He was brought before the king. This trembling foreigner, this captive, standing before the most powerful man on earth, with the lives of every wise man in Babylon resting on his shoulders. "Can you interpret my dream?" the king demanded. And Daniel said something extraordinary. "No," he said. "No wise man, no magician, no astrologer can show the king this mystery. But," and here he lifted his eyes, "there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to you, O king, what will come to pass." Then Daniel described the dream. The very dream Nebuchadnezzar had lost. "You saw a great statue," Daniel said, "enormous, blinding. Its head was of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet were a strange mixture of iron and clay." The king leaned forward. He remembered. Yes, this was it. "And then," Daniel said, "you saw a stone cut out by no human hand. It struck the statue at its feet, and the whole towering image shattered. Gold, silver, bronze, iron, all of it crushed to powder and scattered like chaff on the wind. And the stone that struck it grew into a great mountain that filled the whole earth. The head of gold," Daniel said, "is you, O king. God has given you power and glory and dominion. But after you will come other kingdoms, lesser and lesser, silver and bronze and iron. And in the end, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. A stone cut without hands. A kingdom not built by men that will outlast every empire that ever stood. Silence. And then the unthinkable. Nebuchadnezzar, king of kings, fell on his face before this foreign captive. "Your God," he said, "is a God of gods and a Lord of kings, a revealer of secrets." He lifted Daniel up. He showered him with honor and gifts and power over the whole province of Babylon. For a moment, one shining moment, it seemed the proud king had truly seen.
But pride does not die so easily, because time passed, and a seed that had been planted in Nebuchadnezzar's heart began to grow. He had heard the words "head of gold," and something inside him had latched onto them. You are the head of gold. You, the greatest, the first, the best. He forgot the rest of the dream. He forgot the silver and the bronze and the iron. He forgot the stone that would crush them all. He remembered only the gold. And so the king built an image, a statue of pure gold, 90 feet high, gleaming on the plain of Dura, where all of Babylon could see it. Not a statue with a head of gold and a body of lesser metal. No, this one was gold from head to foot. Do you see what he was doing? He was rewriting the dream. He was telling God, "My kingdom will not pass away. My glory is not the beginning of the end. It is everything. It is forever." Then he gave a command. When the music plays, every soul in the empire will bow down and worship this golden image. And whoever does not bow will be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. The stage was set. The instruments sounded, horn and flute and harp and every kind of music. And across the vast plain, a whole empire fell to its knees like a field of wheat bending in the wind. All except three. 3 young men, the friends of Daniel. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They stood tall while an entire nation groveled in the dust. And someone was watching. Someone always is when you refuse to bow. They were reported to the king, and Nebuchadnezzar, who had once fallen on his face before their God, was seized with rage. He summoned them. He gave them one more chance, because part of him perhaps did not want to destroy these men. "Bow when you hear the music," he said, "and all is forgiven. But if you will not," and here his voice dropped like a blade, "who is the God that shall deliver you out of my hands?" He would learn the answer to that question, and it would break him open like a nut. The 3 young men answered without fear. "O king, we have no need to defend ourselves. If we are thrown into the fire, our God is able to deliver us. But even if he does not, even then, we will not serve your gods. We will not bow to your image." Read those words again, "even if he does not." This was not faith that God would rescue them. This was faith that God was worth dying for, whether he rescued them or not. This was the deepest kind of trust, the kind that does not bargain,
does not flinch, does not require a happy ending to stay faithful. Nebuchadnezzar lost his mind with fury. "Heat the furnace 7 times hotter," he screamed. He had the 3 men bound in their robes and cloaks and thrown into the flames. The fire was so hot that the soldiers who carried them to the edge were burned alive by the blast. And the 3 men fell into the heart of the inferno. Now watch what happens. The king leans forward on his throne, expecting to see 3 bodies consumed in an instant.
But his face changes. His eyes go wide. He rises, stumbling, staring into the flames. He turns to his counselors and his voice shakes. "Did we not throw 3 men into the fire? Bound? Yes, O king, 3. But I see 4, he whispers. 4 men walking loose in the midst of the fire, unharmed. And the fourth is like a son of the gods." There, in the furnace that was meant to destroy them, the 3 young men walked freely, and beside them walked a figure the king could not name, a presence in the fire. God had not kept them out of the flames. He had come down and joined them in the flames. Nebuchadnezzar rushed to the mouth of the furnace and cried out, "Servants of the Most High God, come out!" And they walked out, not a hair singed, not a robe scorched, not even the smell of smoke on them. The whole assembly stood frozen, the most powerful men in the world staring at 3 foreigners who had walked through fire and lived. And once again, the king was humbled.
"Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego," he declared, "who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him. He made a decree protecting their God throughout the land." Twice now. Twice this proud king had been brought to his knees by the God of heaven. Twice he had seen the truth with his own eyes, and still it did not sink all the way down. Because there is a difference between being amazed by God and being changed by God. Nebuchadnezzar was amazed again and again, but amazement fades. And underneath the awe, the old pride was still breathing, still whispering, still waiting. "You are the head of gold. You built all this. You. Then came the final dream. Once more the king woke terrified. Once more his wise men failed him. Once more Daniel was called. And this time, when Daniel heard the dream, something happened that had never happened before. Daniel was silent. He stood before the king, and he could not speak. The dream troubled him so deeply that he was afraid to say it aloud. "Tell me," the king urged, "do not be afraid." And Daniel, with sorrow in his voice, said, "My lord, I wish this dream were for your enemies and not for you." Here was the dream. The king had seen a tree, an enormous tree in the middle of the earth, so tall it touched the sky, so wide that all the world could see it. Its branches were heavy with fruit. Birds nested in its leaves. Beasts sheltered in its shade. It fed and sheltered every living thing. And then a voice from heaven cried out, "Cut it down, strip its branches, scatter its fruit, but leave the stump in the ground, bound with iron and bronze, and let the heart of the tree be changed from the heart of a man to the heart of a beast, until 7 times pass over it." Daniel trembled as he spoke the meaning. "O king, you are the tree.
You have grown great. Your dominion reaches to the ends of the earth. But heaven has decreed that you will be cut down.
You will be driven from among men.
You will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like an ox. 7 seasons will pass over you until you learn the one lesson you have refused to learn: that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men, and he gives them to whomever he will. Then Daniel, this faithful man who owed the king nothing, this captive who could have savored his master's downfall, did something full of grace. He pleaded with him. "O king," he begged, "break off your sins. Show mercy to the poor. Turn from your pride. Perhaps there will be a lengthening of your peace." There was still time. The door was still open. Heaven was giving him a warning, not yet a sentence. For 12 months, nothing happened. 12 whole months of mercy. 12 months in which the king could have humbled himself and been spared. But pride has a long memory and a short attention span. One day, the king was walking on the roof of his royal palace. Below him stretched the city, the walls, the temples, the hanging gardens, the river of gold. All of it his. And the old whisper rose up in his heart one final time, and this time he said it out loud. "Is this not great Babylon that I have built by my mighty power, for the glory of my majesty? One, my power, my glory." The words were still in his mouth when a voice fell from heaven. "O king, to you it is spoken. The kingdom has departed from you." And in that instant, it happened. The mind of the most powerful man on earth simply broke. Something snapped inside him, and the king was gone. In his place was a creature. He was driven from the palace, driven from the company of men out into the fields. His fine robes fell away. He crawled on his hands and knees in the wet grass. He ate grass like an ox. The rain soaked him. His hair grew long and matted like feathers. His nails curved like the claws of a bird. The king who built the hanging gardens now slept in the mud beneath them. The man who ruled the earth could no longer form a single human thought. 7 seasons passed, 7 long turns of the year, and Babylon waited, guarding an empty throne, while its god-king wandered the wilderness like a beast. Now hold that image. Hold the horror of it. And then feel what comes next, because the story does not end in the mud. At the end of the 7 seasons, Nebuchadnezzar did something he had never done in all his years of glory. He lifted his eyes to heaven. That is all. He looked up. And in that moment of surrender, that first helpless glance upward from a broken creature in the grass, his reason returned to him. The fog lifted. The mind came back. The man came back. And the very first thing he did with his restored mind was not to curse God for what he had suffered. He blessed him. "I lifted my eyes to heaven," he said, "and my understanding returned to me. And I blessed the Most High. I praised and honored him who lives forever. His dominion is everlasting.
His kingdom endures from generation to generation. Listen to what this shattered king understood at last. All the inhabitants of the earth are counted as nothing. He does according to his will in heaven and on earth. And no one can stay his hand or say to him, "What are you doing?" The proudest man who ever lived had finally learned the one thing pride can never see, that he was small, and that being small, held in the hand of a great and merciful God, was not a tragedy. It was the truest safety a soul could ever know. His kingdom was restored to him. His majesty and splendor returned, greater than before. But the king who came back down from that field was not the king who had walked up onto that roof. The gold had finally been melted down to something real. And the last words we ever hear from Nebuchadnezzar are not a boast about Babylon. They are a confession. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and honor the King of heaven. For all his works are truth, and his ways are justice.
And those who walk in pride, he is able to abase. He learned it, the hardest way a man can learn anything, but he learned it. So what do we do with a story like this? Why does a mad king in the mud still matter to you thousands of years later? Because Nebuchadnezzar is a mirror, and if you look closely, you will see your own face in the gold. Every one of us builds a Babylon. Maybe yours is a career you sacrificed everything to climb. Maybe it is a reputation you polish and defend. Maybe it is your own strength, your own intelligence, your own ability to survive without needing anyone. And there is a whisper that comes to every human heart, standing on the roof of what we have built. Look what I have made. Look what I have done. By my power, for my glory. The tragedy of Nebuchadnezzar is not that he was powerful. It is that he could not see the hand that gave him the power. And so God, in a mercy that looked at first like ruin, took the gold away so the man could finally be free. Think about the deep magic hidden in this story. A king had to be brought down to the ground before he could look up. He had to lose everything he had built to gain the one thing he could never build. Where Nebuchadnezzar climbed higher and higher and was cast down, another king would one day come who climbed down from the highest heaven on purpose. Where the king of Babylon grasped at glory and lost his mind, the King of Heaven let go of his glory to save ours. Where Nebuchadnezzar was driven out into the wilderness for his pride, Christ walked willingly into the wilderness for our sake and did not fall. The head of gold crumbled, but the stone cut without hands, the kingdom that shall never be destroyed, that stone is still standing. That kingdom is still growing, and it has a room in it for proud men who are finally willing to look up. So let me ask you something gently. What is the Babylon you have built? What is the roof you are standing on right now, tempted to say, by my power, for my glory? And what would it take? What would God have to strip away before you would finally lift your eyes to heaven? Here is the hope buried at the heart of this terrifying story. God did not give up on Nebuchadnezzar, not after the first dream he ignored, not after the golden image, not after the furnace, not even after 12 months of warning went unheeded. God pursued the proudest man alive all the way into the mud, and he waited there in the wilderness until the king looked up. He is still writing stories like this. He is still pursuing proud and broken people. He is still turning ruin into redemption. And he is patient enough and kind enough to wait for you to lift your eyes too. You do not have to lose your mind in a field to learn what Nebuchadnezzar learned. You can look up right now. By the way, if these stories move you, consider subscribing. They take a great deal of work to make, and your support truly means a lot. And before you go, let me leave you with one question to sit with. If you look honestly at your own heart, what is the Babylon you are most proud of building? And are you holding it, or is it holding you? Share your answer in the comments. I read them, and I would love to hear your story.